The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Hartwell and Associates, casting long golden rectangles across the polished marble floor. Sarah Mitchell hurried down the corridor, her heels clicking against the cool stone in a rhythm that matched her racing heart. Papers scattered from her overstuffed folder as she rounded the corner, and she muttered under her breath about the presentation that had kept her up until 3 in the morning. As she bent to gather the wayward documents, she noticed a pair of well-polished dress shoes step into her line of vision. Looking up, she saw a young man with dark hair and kind eyes, wearing a crisp white shirt and navy trousers. He was already kneeling, helping her collect the papers with careful attention. "Thank you so much," Sarah said, accepting the documents from his hands. "I'm such a mess this morning." "You must be the new intern everyone's been talking about." The man paused for just a moment, his fingers still holding one of her charts. Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps, or amusement. But then, he smiled, a warm expression that made the corners of his eyes crinkle. "I'm David," he said simply, standing and offering her his hand to help her up. "Sarah Mitchell, senior analyst," she replied, brushing dust from her skirt. "Welcome to the chaos. I hope you're ready for a real initiation by fire today." David nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I'm ready for whatever comes." There was something about the way he spoke, confident but not arrogant, assured but still approachable, that made Sarah feel instantly at ease. Most interns were either overly eager or visibly terrified on their first day. David seemed neither. "Well, since we're both heading in the same direction, want to walk together?" Sarah asked, adjusting her folder. "I can give you the unofficial tours and fill you in on what to expect." As they walked down the long hallway, Sarah found herself stealing glances at her companion. There was something polished about him that seemed unusual for an intern. His shirt was perfectly pressed, his posture confident, and he carried himself with the kind of ease that usually came with experience. "So, what made you choose Hartwell and Associates?" Sarah asked, slowing her pace to match his more measured stride. David considered the question carefully. "The company has an excellent reputation," he said, "and I've heard wonderful things about the people who work here." His answer was diplomatic, Sarah thought, but there was sincerity in his voice that she appreciated. They passed several colleagues in the hallway, and she noticed how some of them nodded respectfully to David, though none stopped to chat. She assumed they were being polite to the new intern. "The work can be intense," Sarah continued, "but it's rewarding. Just last month, I led a project that helped restructure 3 different departments. It was exhausting, but seeing the positive impact made it all worthwhile." David listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about her work and the company culture. His questions were surprisingly sophisticated for someone just starting out, but Sarah attributed it to good preparation and natural intelligence. They reached the elevator bank, and as they waited, Sarah realized how much she was enjoying the conversation. David had a way of listening that made her feel heard, really heard. It had been months since she'd had such an engaging discussion with a colleague. "I should warn you," Sarah said as the elevator doors opened, "the senior partners can be intimidating at first, but they're actually quite fair if you do good work and show initiative." "I'll keep that in mind," David replied, his tone slightly amused. The elevator carried them up to the 15th floor, where Sarah's office was located. As they stepped out, she noticed David glancing around with what looked like familiarity rather than the wide-eyed curiosity she expected from a newcomer. "Your orientation is probably on the 10th floor, Sarah said, checking her watch. "But if you have any questions throughout the day, don't hesitate to find me. I remember how overwhelming the first day can be." David's expression softened. "Thank you, Sarah, that means more than you know." There was something in his voice, a warmth and gratitude that seemed deeper than the situation warranted. But before Sarah could analyze it further, her phone buzzed with a reminder about her morning meeting. "I have to run," she said, already backing toward her office. "But let's catch up later, okay? Maybe lunch." "I'd like that," David said, and Sarah thought she detected a hint of anticipation in his voice. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of meetings and deadlines. Sarah found herself thinking about David several times, wondering how his first day was going. There had been something different about him, something that set him apart from the usual crop of nervous interns. When lunchtime arrived, Sarah realized she had no way to contact the new intern. She made a mental note to get his email address from HR and focused on catching up with her backlog of work. The afternoon brought its own set of challenges, including an unexpected request from the senior partners for a rush analysis. Sarah worked straight through until evening, finally emerging from her office as the sun was setting behind the city skyline. The next morning arrived with the promise of clearer weather and a lighter workload. Sarah felt more optimistic as she prepared for her meeting with the senior partners about the Morrison account, potential new client that could bring significant business to the firm. She gathered her presentation materials and made her way to the executive floor, a level of the building she visited only for the most important meetings. The receptionist directed her to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows and an impressive view of the city. Sarah knocked on the heavy oak door and heard a familiar voice call, "Come in." She pushed open the door and stepped into the elegant office, her prepared greeting dying on her lips. Behind the massive mahogany desk sat David, the man she had mistaken for an intern just the day before. He was wearing a perfectly tailored dark suit now, and the nameplate on his desk read David Harrison, Senior Partner. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks as the full weight of her mistake became clear. This was David Harrison, the youngest senior partner in the firm's history, the man whose innovative strategies had been featured in industry magazines, the person she had offered to show around like a lost intern. "Please, sit down," David said gently, his voice carrying the same warmth it had the day before. Sarah remained standing, mortified. "I am so sorry," she began, her words tumbling over each other. "I had no idea who you were. I must have seemed so presumptuous, so condescending." David held up a hand, and his expression was kind rather than offended. "Sarah, please, sit down." Reluctantly, she took the chair across from his desk, her presentation materials forgotten in her lap. "I should apologize to you," David said, leaning forward slightly. "I could have corrected your assumption immediately, but I didn't." "What?" Sarah asked, genuinely curious despite her embarrassment. David was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the morning light. "Do you know how long it's been since someone talked to me without knowing my title first?" he asked, "without measuring their words or trying to impress me or tell me what they think I want to hear." Sarah remained silent, beginning to understand. "You treated me like a person," David continued. "You were kind to someone you thought was just starting out, someone who couldn't do anything for your career. You offered help and guidance without expecting anything in return. But I was so patronizing," Sarah protested. "Telling you about the company, warning you about the senior partners." David smiled, the same genuine expression she remembered. "From the hallway, you were generous with your knowledge and experience. You wanted to help someone succeed. There's nothing patronizing about that." Sarah felt her embarrassment beginning to fade, replaced by a different kind of awareness. "So, this meeting is about the Morrison account?" "Yes," David confirmed. "I requested you specifically for this project based on your work with departmental restructuring. But I'll admit, yesterday's conversation only reinforced my decision." They looked at each other across the desk, and Sarah realized that despite the awkwardness of the situation, she felt the same comfortable connection she had experienced in the hallway. David was still the same thoughtful, genuine person, regardless of his title. "Well," Sarah said, finally opening her presentation folder, "in that case, let me show you what I've prepared for Morrison Industries." As she began her presentation, David listened with the same focused attention he had shown the day before. But now Sarah understood that his insightful questions came not from exceptional preparation for an internship, but from years of experience and a sharp business mind. When she finished, David nodded approvingly. "This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking Morrison needs. I'd like you to lead this project." "Even after I mistook you for an intern?" Sarah asked, still hardly believing the turn of events. David laughed, a sound that filled the office with warmth. "Especially because you mistook me for an intern," he said. "It tells me you judge people by their character, not their position. That's exactly the kind of leader this project needs." As Sarah gathered her materials to leave, David stood as well. "And Sarah, that lunch invitation from yesterday, does it still stand?" Sarah paused at the door, turning back to meet his eyes. "Are you asking as the senior